Ottawa has outlined plans to boost protections for the North, including appointing an Arctic ambassador, opening new consulates, and continuing its boundary negotiations with the United States and Denmark over territories of shared interest or dispute. It's part of an effort to safeguard against Russian and other geopolitical threats. The Foreign Affairs Minister outlined some of the changes earlier.
Canada is an Arctic nation, and we are at a critical moment. The Arctic is no longer a low-tension region. We live in a tough world, and we need to be tougher in our response. And that's why today I'm pleased to launch Canada's new Arctic foreign policy. We'll continue to assert Canada's sovereignty, including over the Northwest Passage. Diplomacy and defense go hand in hand. We will make sure to increase our cooperation with our Arctic allies and NATO.
The CBC's Marina von Stackelberg has more from Ottawa on what exactly this northern strategy entails.
It is a pretty encompassing plan, and you can imagine this is about a domestic plan and an international plan, because with climate change we are seeing, things like Arctic shipping, resource development, sovereignty, security. These are all becoming increasing issues, as also when we think about the situation with Russia right now and just how close Canada's north is to that country. So this is really a comprehensive plan that includes, research and development, ambassadors, various different types of diplomacy to happen, negotiations. And I want you to listen a little bit more to what Melanie Joly had to say earlier today about the need for defense in Canada, in Canada's north, and specifically how that relates to the incoming U.S. Trump administration.
What was clear from the meeting between the Prime Minister and President-elect Trump was that the Arctic was really important for the U.S. and that the upcoming administration sees our work on the Arctic in a very favorable way. What also the upcoming administration is very concerned about, and President-elect Trump was concerned about during his first term, was the lack of icebreakers production, and the fact that we were not doing as much as Russia and China.
So this policy really has a lot to do with defending Canada's north, but it is really a foreign affairs document. And we've heard that this was really needed so that Canada could step up its defense spending so that it would have a bit of a framework to work with. So some of the things that are included in this are consulates that will be created in Alaska and Greenland, security talks with other northern countries, boundary negotiations with the United States over some areas that are kind of up in the air as to what belongs to who and where that boundary is. And also as we look at the issue with Russia, an acknowledgement that Canada needs to have a stronger presence in its north and really handle this a bit more thoroughly than they have in the past. And a lot of this, too, was about the fact that a lot of decisions about Canada's north have been made by people in the south. I want you to have a listen to what the head of Canada's National Inuit Organization had to say about that.
I grew up in the shadow of the militarization of the Arctic. The infrastructure in those communities was built for the militarization of the Arctic, largely World War II and Cold War era. The decisions about not only those communities, but all the dew-line sites, all of the infrastructure that exists across Inuit Nunangat was made independent of our democracies, was made without consideration of the impact upon us.
And so this strategy also outlines a plan to have an Arctic ambassador stationed in Canada's north to work on some of these diplomacy issues, and really a commitment that any policy about Canada's north going forward is going to include the expertise and the voices of Northern and Indigenous people.
And do we have an idea of what this will cost?
Well, right now, this policy only allocates a relatively small amount of money, which is $34 million in the first year and then $7 million each year after that. And that's really for that consulate, officials, ambassador sort of piece. But this will cost a lot more, especially as we think about defense spending. And as I mentioned, this policy document will really help guide the defense spending that is needed in the north. But a big point that was made today is that, in order to have a strong defense of the north, you have to have strong communities. Have a listen to Nunavut's premier on that issue.
think to assert sovereignty, you need to have healthy communities. And that's something we've been mentioning as Northern Premiers, as Indigenous organizations. We heard it's investments in our communities that will assert our right to the Arctic, that we have to start expediting these infrastructure projects that are nation building. And I'll use housing was something we've talked about here, where you really need healthy communities to assert that, and it starts with housing. But it will require investment. It's great to have a policy, but it will require hard investments into the north.
And so while a lot of this policy document is about protecting and defending Canada's north from foreign actors, it's also about protecting and defending the people of Canada's north as well.
The CBC's Marina von Stackelberg from Ottawa.